and thank you for joining me today for The Way to a Wonderful Life. I am Reverend Dr. Henry Lee Bates, coming to you live from Palm Springs, California, teaching from the philosophy of the Mastermind Jesus, the wisdom of the ancients, and the evolutionary science of mind. This program is not pre-recorded, nor is it edited. It is live. For more information about this ministry, please visit www.revbates.tv or www.revbatesontheradio.org. You can also find me on youtube.com by going to youtube.com and typing in the search box, The Way to a Wonderful Life channel. That's The Way to a Wonderful Life channel, where you'll find over 170 of my radio broadcasts that you can listen to 24/7 in both English and Spanish. You can also go to MSN, Yahoo, Bing, and Google and type in the search box Reverend Henry Bates, that's B-A-T-E-S, and you'll find everything you want to find out about this ministry. Now, this is a healing and teaching ministry, spiritual but not religious, as we go beyond religion and we follow those simple yet profound spiritual healing principles given to us by the Mastermind Jesus, so that we can believe in our prayer and the answer to it. For we believe and we know that God responds to us by corresponding to our faith and our belief that with God, all good things are possible. With God, all good things are possible. Now, you can send me your prayer requests, your questions, your comments about this program, and you can also send a tithe, a donation, or a faith offering in support of this radio ministry, and you can do all those things from the website, revbates.tv or revbatesontheradio.org, or you can mail those to Reverend Henry Bates, that's B-A-T-E-S, Rev Bates Ministries, P.O. Box 1173, Palm Springs, California, 92263. So once again, this is The Way to a Wonderful Life, coming to you live from Palm Springs, California. I am Reverend Dr. Henry Lee Bates, and we're going to open our program, as we always do, with our prayer affirmation, with a reminder of those words of the Mastermind Jesus, to pray believing that it is. Pray believing that that good desire is God's good desire for you and that it is yours. Everything necessary for you to have it, to be it, to do it, is being made available to you. So possess it in your mind first, and as Jesus tells us, it is done unto us as we believe. So let's begin this morning. If you're not driving a vehicle or operating something mechanical, just pause for a moment and listen for that word, that phrase, or that statement that will stir up the spirit within you. Let's begin by saying these words out loud. Say them out loud with me if you can. I believe and I receive. Let's say that one more time. I believe and I receive. And let's know together that as I believe with a deep inward calm, that my word of faith is responded to in the affirmative, I know that my word penetrates any and every unbelief in my thought. It casts out fear, removes doubts, and permits that which I desire to experience to be made manifest in the right and perfect time. I have complete conviction that my prayers will be carried out in my experience with mathematical certainty. I have absolute reliance upon the law of good, which is the law of God. I know that as I keep faith with God, everything works for my good. I believe and I receive, and so it is, amen. And so it is, amen. This morning I want to take some time this morning here on The Way to a Wonderful Life to talk about the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We observed his life and his achievements this coming Monday all across the country. And I have a document here from the end of 1956. It's either November or December 1956. It's titled Integrated Bus Suggestions, and this was issued by the Montgomery Improvement Association, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., President, and the Reverend W.J. Powell, Secretary. So these are suggestions for people who are going to ride on buses for the first time, where the buses weren't segregated, that the buses had become integrated But these people had to muster up all the courage they could muster up against the opposition, and to get on these buses, they had to have a faith in something greater than them, a faith in something, knowing that this is just one step forward to liberty and freedom and justice for all. And so as we think about where we were in this country in 1956, we realize that no matter what it is that's going on in our world, there's always opportunity for change, because the infinite spirit, intelligence, power of God that moves through every heart and mind and every soul of every living thing is always seeking to express more of itself, its lovingness, its livingness, its givingness, and its forgivingness. And we know that just as we've come a long way from 1956, we know that the Buddha said that as far as you have come, that much farther you must go. The Buddha said, as far as you have come, that much farther you have to go. So we know that's true for all of us. So let's look at this document, and let's think about what was going on here on that day in 1956 when these buses were integrated in Montgomery, Alabama for the first time. The document states, this is a historic week because segregation on buses has now been declared unconstitutional. Within a few days, the Supreme Court mandate will reach Montgomery, and you will be reboarding integrated buses. This places upon us all a tremendous responsibility of maintaining, in face of what could be seen as unpleasantness, a calm but loving dignity benefiting good citizens and members of our race. If there is violence in word or deed, it must not be our people who commit it. For your help and convenience, the following suggestions are made. Will you read, study, and memorize them so that our nonviolent determination may not be endangered? First, some general suggestions. Number one, not all white people are opposed to integrated buses, except goodwill on the part of many. Number two, the whole bus is new. The whole bus is now for the use of all people. Take a vacant seat. 3, pray for guidance and commit yourself to complete nonviolence in word and action as you enter the bus. 4, demonstrate the calm dignity of our Montgomery people in your actions. 5, in all things, observe ordinary rules of courtesy and good behavior. 6, remember that this is not a victory for Negroes alone, but for all Montgomery and the South. Do not boast, do not brag. 7, be quiet but friendly, proud but not arrogant, joyous but not boisterous. 8, be loving enough to absorb evil and understanding enough to turn the enemy into a friend. Now for some specific suggestions. And remember, this is written by the great Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the Reverend W.J. Powell. It's the Montgomery Improvement Association Integrated Bus Suggestion. So now they tell us now for more specific, or for some specific suggestions. Take in mind, this is 1956. And remember, this is a time when people had to have great courage in order to affect the changes that not only affected the people of Montgomery, Alabama, but for affected people worldwide, not even just in the United States, but worldwide. When one person gains a greater liberty, or one person gains a greater understanding, a greater realization of their living spirit, of the living spirit of God within them, everybody gains. Everybody gains. As Jesus said, when I be lifted up, I lift all men unto me. So let's continue with this document, because I want everybody to think about where we were in 1956. Now for some specific suggestions. 1, the bus driver is in charge of the bus and has been instructed to obey the law. Assume that he will cooperate in helping you occupy any vacant seat. 2, Do not deliberately sit by a white person unless there is no other seat. 3, in sitting down by a person, white or colored, say may I or pardon me as you sit. This is a common courtesy. 4, if cursed, do not curse back. If pushed, do not push back. If struck, do not strike back, but evidence love and goodwill at all times. 5, in case of an incident, talk as little as possible and always in a quiet tone. Do not get up from your seat. Report all serious incidents to the bus driver. 6, for the first few days, try to get on the bus with a friend in whose nonviolence you have confidence. You can uphold one another by a glance or a prayer. 7, if another person is being molested, do not arise to go to his defense, but pray for the oppressor and the moral and spiritual forces to carry on the struggle for justice. 8, look at those words. Pray for the oppressor and use moral and spiritual forces to carry on the struggle for justice. This is so powerful. Number 8, according to your own ability and personality, do not be afraid to experiment with new and creative techniques for achieving reconciliation and social change. 9, if you feel you cannot take it, wait for another week or two. We have confidence in our people. God bless you all. God bless you all. That's from the great Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the Reverend W.J. Powell. And that was the integrated bus suggestions that were issued at the time the buses were integrated in Montgomery, Alabama, and that was in 1956. And I want to stress those words of the Buddha one more time because I'm telling you, Jesus would be in full agreement with him. He said that as far as we have come, that much further must we go. As far as we have come, that much further we must go. And so we know that ending racism and that ending all these isms, these anti-Semitisms and all these things, nationalism, ending all those things will only get us closer to God. Jesus said, love one another. Love one another, he said. He didn't get for us to be affectionate or for us to just have a good time. He said, love one another, because it's a principle. As we love. Love means a creative force. It means a force of nonviolence, just as Dr. Martin Luther King and the Reverend W.J. Powell points out in those suggestions. It's a force for good, and that force for good cannot be stopped. So once again, this is The Way to a Wonderful Life, coming to you live from Palm Springs, California. I am Reverend Dr. Henry Lee Bates, and our Way to a Wonderful Life for today is titled Impersonal Love and Law. Impersonal Love and Law. When the Mastermind Jesus instructed his followers to look to nature as the way to realize a greater understanding of our relationship to life, he gave us a key to spiritual insight in the simplest of words. God is impersonal. It is up to us to personalize the power. It's up to us to personalize the spirit. And it's up to us to personalize the intelligence that our Creator has made available to us, all of us. We do this by involving ourselves with the Spirit, with God's love and God's law. But first we must be able to discern what is love and what is law. Both the love of God and the law of God are illustrated throughout the entire Holy Bible and the Torah and some of the greatest books of philosophy ever written. But so much of the noise and the nonsense of the world has been focused on the cultural laws of the ancients that for many, the changeless, immutable, universal law of God has not been understood or put into use in a practical way. The Mastermind Jesus stated, as you sow, so shall you reap. And in the book of Proverbs 23:7, we can read, for as he thinks within himself, so is he. And so we realize that the great teacher Jesus was referring to those thoughts, ideas, and beliefs that we sow into our mind. Pardon me. Let's think about these words from the great Dr. Ernest Holmes. The Spirit can give us only what we can take. It imparts of itself only as we partake of its nature. It can tell us only what we can understand. The infinite knowingness becomes our wisdom only in such degree as we embody its intelligence. It has been said that we can know God only insofar as we can become God. This is a far-reaching thought and should be carefully scrutinized. It is to be taken figuratively and not too literally, for we can really become God, but we can and do partake of the divine nature, the livingness, the givingness, the forgivingness of God. And the universal does personify itself through mankind in varying degrees according to our receptivity to it, That's from the great Ernest Holmes. Now, the world has made simplicity into complexity. We have lost sight of the truth that God is right now. God is always present. God is just as gravity is, electricity is, mathematics is. The sun is shining today. Somewhere, God is right now, right where we are, and that our connection with God is always in the present moment, or to use a popular term, the now. We keep looking back when we should always be looking onward and upward, lifting our consciousness into the realm of the divine and away from our human limitations. The only limits that we will find in our lives are the limits that we have self-imposed. The God-created universe does not limit us, nor does it punish us. It gives to all alike. That is why the mastermind Jesus stated, ask and you shall receive, period. Ask and you shall receive. It's that simple. Ask and you shall receive. Have the faith to know that when you ask, it is God working through you, bringing to you that awareness of those good desires in your mind, and that good desire that comes to our awareness, that takes nothing away from anyone else nor diminishes anyone in any way, shape, or form, including ourselves, is always God's good desire for us. We have limited ourselves with judgments of good and bad, when all the time our good has always been assured. God does not see us as unworthy or undeserving of the good that we seek. These things we have learned from the world, and for some, these beliefs have created a wretched life experience, There's nothing more wretched than people who hold something against someone or hate someone for some nonsensical reason based on the label that the world has given them, or the race of the person, or the religion of the person, or the nationality of the person, or the language that they speak, or the sexual orientation of the person. We must let go of the hate and the judgment and the criticalness in order for the flow of the divine to move through our mind, our heart, and our soul, and heal our body, heal our emotions, heal our thoughts of limitation and lack, and replace them with that expansiveness and that abundance of God's goodness. Let's examine some more wisdom from the great Dr. Ernest Holmes. Since an understanding of any law must pass first through our conscious mind before we can make use of it, it follows that with all our getting, we should get understanding. That's what Solomon tells us in the ancient wisdom. Should we wish to know a certain truth, we should state that this truth is already known. Say, I know it already. I know it because I know that as I say that I know it, as I say that I have that solution, I have that right idea, I'm tapping into that higher intelligence, that greater intelligence, which is the infinite. And as the Spirit receives that knowingness, that direction, that specificness of and that definiteness of my thought, it shall respond to me, So should we wish to know a certain truth, we should state that this truth is already known in mind, and this statement will be true. It will be true. But the overmind must be accepted into our mind before we can understand it. How then are we to accomplish the desired result? By stating and feeling that our mind knows the truth about the thing we desire to know. If God gave us a good desire, brought to our awareness, because there's only one mind, there's only one life, there's only one spirit, one power, one intelligence, that's God, and we're in it. In Him we live and move and have our being, and in us God is seeking, desiring to experience something more, something expanded, something more abundant, something more wonderful. And we can believe that. And as we do, by stating and feeling that our mind knows the truth about the thing we desire to know, in this way we draw the infinite mind, the infinite power, intelligence, and spirit into our mentalities for definite knowledge of some particular good. That's from the great Dr. Ernest Holmes, a little modified this morning by Rev Bates. But anyway, let's understand that our state of mind is the filter of receptivity to the one mind, which is the spirit. Our awareness of this relationship of our finite mind to the infinite mind, to God, determines the ideas and thoughts that our mind is conscious of. If our state of mind is filled with limitation and limited concepts of life, then we become unconscious to the ideas that can free us from limitation. We have no awareness of them. In other words, they don't come to us. And you see that in so many ways in life if you observe life. Observe the people around you and the ideas that they have for themselves. Observe the world around you and the ideas that people have about what they can do. I mean, think about just like this last week in Afghanistan, in Kabul, I think it was, how these terrorists attacked this restaurant and killed 21 people. And they were so boisterous in their thinking that they had a victory. But what was their victory? It was a nothingness. It was a hateful thing that will come back to them. That's that sowing and reaping, that cause and effect that creates all this continued nonsense in our world. But people are too foolish to understand it, to realize it, to know it. Just like that racism of the past in our culture here in the United States, and the racism that persists. Can you imagine? Can you imagine that there was a time when people, based on their race, couldn't sit on a certain seat of a bus? I mean, how outrageously silly is that? And these were religious people. This is termed, in 1956, I think people called it a Christian country. A Christian country. Where are all these Christian leaders? Where are all these Christian ministers and pastors and priests? Where were they in all this nonsense? Here we have the great Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King and the Reverend W.J. Powell putting out the suggestions for the safety of the people in this world of nonsense. It's sad when you think about it. There is no mystery involved in what spirit does. What it does in the intellectual and the simple-minded, the seeming wealthy and the seeming poor. It is no respecter of persons, and most importantly, it is not dependent on conditions. No matter what conditions may exist in our lives at this moment, by using the power of our faith and the right spirit, we can transform our life experiences to the highest level. We can conceive of and embody them in mind. And the Spirit does amazing and marvelous things for us, through us, as we mentally work, definitely toward the good that we desire for ourselves, and not let ourselves be distracted by the things of the world. And we can do this by using the effectiveness of affirmative prayer. In constructing an affirmative prayer, we conceive of what we want. What is it that we want? Is it physical, mental, spiritual? Do we want to be more joyous? Do we want to be more loving? Do we want more love to come to us? Do we want more material things? Do we want money? What is it that we want? We want a new car, a new home. So in constructing an affirmative prayer, we conceive of what we want. We mentally create a picture of it in our mind that elicits the feeling of having it. We make that picture so real, and we make it so active and give it so much energy that we get into the feeling of having it, and then we put this mental picture and feeling into words that are definite to create the result which we have definitely chosen to actualize and experience. And just as Jesus said, it will be done unto us as we believe. This begins the shift in our consciousness from contemplation to realization. In other words, we begin to embody it and embrace it. I believe we can only know God to the measure that we are willing to experience God and no more. We can only know God to the measure that we are willing to experience God and no more. And our prayers let us realize that as we experience the good, those good desires that have come to us, that have come to our awareness from this one spirit, this one mind, this one intelligence, this one power, this one presence, as we experience those good desires, we are experiencing God. All of God that we can believe. All of God that we can believe to be true for us. As the Mastermind Jesus stated so simply, It reigns in the good and the bad alike, the just and the unjust. So let us never doubt and remain ever faithful, knowing that this law of God is impersonal, this love of God is impersonal. It's up to us to personalize it. It's up to us to personalize it. You know, so many years ago, I remember hearing that Jewish people were God's chosen people, that we are the chosen people. That's what we would hear. And I asked my great friend Harvey Krause, I said, what does that mean, Harvey? Because I'm Jewish, so I don't know where that came from, and I really haven't found anything that gives me a definitive answer. And he said, well, it's not that the Jewish people are chosen by God, they're God's chosen people. It's that they choose God, they choose the good, so therefore they're the chosen people. They choose God, and so therefore God chooses them. And that's what this impersonal law and love is all about, that Jesus was teaching, the Buddha was teaching, that Krishna was teaching, that Ernest Holmes was teaching, and all the great teachers have taught. You can see it all the way through Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John in the Gospels. That this law and this love of God is impersonal, and so therefore is not dependent on anything in the physical, anything in the material. It can break through even the most racist, hardcore, unloving, hateful mind and create a transformation as we all lift our mind higher and higher into that realm of love and kindness and cooperation and just really find ourselves believing that this love of God, this calm, poised love of God is a powerful, so much stronger than anything else. I was so taken by that statement in Dr. Martin Luther King's and Reverend William Powell's suggestion that according to your own skills and personality, do not be afraid to experiment new and this is a really, really bad document, to experiment with new and creative techniques for achieving reconciliation and social change. Use your moral and spiritual forces to, I can't even read it, carry on the struggle for justice. There we go. Thank you, Father. So we know that we believe and we accept that this was a great movement towards that greater love of God being experienced by more and more people in all ways. And as Dr. Holmes says, this was not a victory for Negroes alone, but for Montgomery and the South and for everyone. And we know that it went way beyond Montgomery and the South, and it became something that influenced the entire world. So let's go back and let's realize that the good that we claim is ours, but we must claim it for everyone. Our desires are God's desires for us, and in every good desire from God, we will find that there's a way in which we're going to share that good, that we're going to expand that good and create a greater good for someone else as well as ourselves. So let's recognize and know that impersonal love of God, that impersonal law of God, gives us the way to do those things that are ours to do. Love points the way, and the law makes the way possible. Love gives us a good desire, and that it is done unto us as we believe, creates that magnetic energy that draws to us everything for our good. So once again, I want to thank you for being with me this morning. It's been my great pleasure to have you. I am Reverend Dr. Henry Lee Bates. This has been The Way to a Wonderful Life. You can find me on YouTube.com by going to YouTube.com and typing in the search box The Way to a Wonderful Life channel, and you'll find over 170 of my radio broadcasts that you can listen to 24/7. You can also go to revbatesontheradio.org and find the full radio schedule. The Way to a Wonderful Life is broadcast on the radio live 7 days a week, on the internet 17 times a week. Once again, let's rejoice and give thanks right now, right where we are, for the best of times and the best of everything. Let's celebrate Dr. Martin Luther King's achievements in his life and his love and his courage tomorrow. Each and every one of us, let's do that and let's just know that all the joy and the glory of God will move through our mind, our heart, and our soul in a greater way every day. And so it is. Amen.